Hello, everyone. Welcome to this live Ask Me Anything session with William Banzai7. We're so happy to have you all here. By way of a quick introduction, I am Zahra Sethna. I'm the co-founder of Collapse Life, which is a blog and a podcast that explores the ways the world is changing around us and what we might do not just to survive the storm, but thrive within it. You can find us at collapselife.com. And while you're here with us tonight, please do us a favor and hit that subscribe button on YouTube. We have a podcast that comes out every week, and we've been fortunate enough to host Bill on that podcast twice now. And we're really, really happy that he's agreed to do this live session so that all of you can not only hear from him, but interact directly and get all your questions answered. So we'll just ask that you put your comments and questions in the chat, and we will do our best to get to as many of them as possible. So Bill, how are you today?
Terrific. But something's happened. Hold on. I'm fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so we have a technical thing that glitched.
What happened?
It could be on my end. I was hearing like an echo.
Okay.
Well,
are you still hearing it?
Am I latent right now when I'm speaking?
No, not that I can tell. You seem fully real time.
Because I am hearing like a delayed, I hear myself talking in delay.
Okay. Do you have a settings button? Oh, now you're muted. Did you just mute yourself? Can't hear you at all now, Bill. We were hearing you perfectly before. Nope, can't hear you now. I don't know what you did. Can't hear you. Oh, we were doing so well too.
Hey, Bill.
There's Steven, the producer.
Can you hear me?
No, Bill, we can't hear you. We can see your lips moving.
You must have. Did you? What setting did you change?
We can't hear you. Do you know what? Just jump out and come back in and let's see what happens.
Yep, that'd be great. In the meantime, maybe I'll run your Shaolin video.
Yeah. No, we can't hear you. Just jump out, come back in the studio, we'll see what happens. Thanks for everybody for bearing with us. Bill shared this
It's not important
video.
that you become a good fighter in this world. And it's not important that you become a good spiritual guide in this world. It's important that you find a way to live a pleasant life and in the best case, support other people that they also find the same. This is what it's about. No matter in which form you put it and which from cultural background you put it. The main idea is, if you don't find this way of reducing the suffering of your surrounding, your suffering won't stop.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay.
We can hear you. Can you still hear us?
Yep, I was able to figure out what was wrong.
Ah, excellent.
I had you open on another screen, on another, so I was hearing twice. Now I'm fine.
Well,
okay, sorry about
let's
that.
Let's just set the mood here, Bill. Why don't you put on your badass sunglasses and then let's get going.
Thank you. Yeah, let's go.
There you go. There's badass bonsai.
Okay.
So welcome. We have a lot of people here who are very excited to see you live and in person. We have a lot of people who have been following Zero Hedge for a long time. So they know you, they know your work, they know all the phases you've been through. and they're really happy to hear from you. And one of your longtime fans, Erica, was in touch, and she wanted to know a little bit about your process. Is that somewhere where you want to start?
Sure.
She wanted to know, how long does it take you to do a piece?
This is a silly answer, but it depends. You know, some things are spinning in the background always.
Yeah.
It's really just the things that are spinning in the background are not like, you know, one-offs. They're projects, and I haven't actually done many of those recently because time becomes, you know, very valuable as you grow older. But, you know, for example, I used to do these elaborate Monopoly boards, or you know, the Sgt. Pepper albums, you know, covers, where I have to get all the faces and arrange it, and then do the artwork on the bottom and this and that. You know, that's something that could take a weekend, because I'm not going to sit at the screen constantly working on that. I'm going to, you know, take breaks, go back and look at again this and that. You know, but it takes 2 days to do something like that, or the elaborate charts I do. You know,
Yes.
like the Biden crime family. That's going to take an afternoon, because I have to run around and find all the faces that I want to use. It has to be funny, you know, so you have to find the perfect. Other things are, you know, I'm just like everybody else here. I am completely mesmerized by things going on in the news.
Yeah.
You know, incredible. And there's no doubt that we are now living in an interesting, you know, the old Chinese proverb or curse, you know, may you live in interesting times. We were living, and now we are really living in very interesting times.
Interesting doesn't even start to explain it.
I mean,
I
there's
was
so many
I was
things. But
joking
just
that
to finish it off,
go ahead.
to answer that question,
Yeah.
a lot of times it's just, it is sort of one-off. I'll look at an article or something on Zero Hedge or wherever. I have other things that I look at. And then I'll be walking around during the day doing the other things that I do. I have another life that takes up quite a bit of time, but you know, it'll be spinning, and then I'll say, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to, and then it just becomes an exercise of me remembering that's what I said I was going to do. And usually, I'm not going to say that if I just started yesterday I would be able to do this, but I've been doing this now for almost 15 years, right? So I've looked at so many pictures. I know where everything is. You know, when I get an idea, it's not just movies, it's just all kinds of other cultural images. I get an idea, I know where I'm going to go get it, and then it just becomes, you know, do it neatly so that it looks acceptable. It's not going to be a masterpiece because I follow the news, you know, and I put it up, you know, within 12 hours of something being put. If there's something that inspires me, yeah, that needs a picture, I'll just do it and then get it up. So I don't pretend it's pretentious, you know, and it's like, you know, I don't. In the very beginning, people said, "Oh, you know, you're an artist. You're not just," you know. And it took me a long time to finally get my arms around that idea. Oh, you're an artist. And what really got me, you know, was when people started saying, "I want that picture, please." Forget about the money. I mean, it's just a lot of people saying, "I want that picture, please," you know.
Mm-hmm.
Then,
do you actually sell your work?
You know, I wouldn't call it sell, because I know that someone asked about why I'm not commercializing. It's I have this view that you only need what you really need, what you feel you need to ask for. You know, and it's easy for someone like me, well into his 60s now, to make a statement. I'm not like this. I'm not a young man anymore. When you're a young man, you got a family, you got a life ahead, or a young lady, or whatever. You need to worry about putting bread on the table and taking care of everybody else around you. You don't have the luxury of saying, I don't have to worry about this, or I don't want to think about this. But as you grow older and things, you know, these expenses or obligations start to peel away, and you're able, then it's just basically whatever consequences flow from these kinds of decisions and actions are only going to affect you or your immediate, you know, your wife, your partner, or whoever, then if you're a team, you're able to, do something like this. So many people have come to me over the years and with, why aren't you trying to commercialize this? And I, for a while, there in the very beginning when I realized that people wanted to help me, I said to myself, I'm producing pictures now because someone might buy one. And that's really not,
changes
why I
changes
do it.
the
It
impetus.
changes the whole exercise. I still want to remain true to my principles and what it is I'm saying, but the motivation is slightly different. And I'm not going to disparage artists who have to do that because they have to make a living. It's very hard. I know. So I just decided. I said, this is not why I'm doing this. I'm not going to do that if I don't have to.
Right.
I'm
But if
only
someone
gonna
wants a
ask them.
print of a particular piece that you have,
All they need to
can,
do is send me an email. The only thing
they
that
can
Danny, who is my friend, the fellow who runs the print shop, that he's an inspiration. Danny, that's one of the reasons why he's my printer. He's a great artist and printer, but he and I had discussed this many times, and we're not in this to create we don't, I never got into this, this is an exclusive print and we're only going to sell, 20 of these, therefore you got to pay more. He and I just decided, this is silly because these are not, they're digital, and both of us have a very high level, of technical specification or whatever you call it. We're not going to sell junk. So if there's a picture someone wants, and I have to say, look, I don't have the resolution in that image. There's just not enough pixels to blow it up the way you want to. So
right.
We'll try. He can do a smaller one or this or that, but
That's cool.
that's the only thing. I'm not. And the other thing is, I'm not going to engage in outright copyright violating. Okay.
Right.
And I think I actually, as a lawyer in the very beginning, I was very careful and a little bit concerned about bumping into copyright problems. Mm-hmm. And I read all the case law, and I'm very familiar with what is said in the courts about fair use, etc. And I still don't want a problem.
Sure, of course.
And there are certain, I'm not even going to name them, but there are certain artistic warehouses, I might call them, that have their, images, and they have, copyright Nazis who are lawyers who basically spend all their time looking for opportunities to shake people down.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sell a print that I think is going to have that problem, because the first thing that you have to do is for anybody who's interested in this, if there's any artists out there, if you basically take an image and use it for whatever purpose, political, satire, this and that, and you subvert it, you take it and turn it into, you transform it into something else, then you're creating a pretty strong case that this is fair use. You're not just copying an image simply because you need an image to copy, So, and as the years have gone by, I'll just finish this thought, is that now with AI, the whole world of, copyright restrictions, etc., has changed completely, because everybody's doing these AI pictures now, and I've tried it, and I won't do it. The algorithms that are doing this are basically taking pictures from everywhere else,
Of course.
or text, and it's one big, huge hornet's nest of copyright issues that
it wouldn't work
someone
otherwise.
someone else needs to worry about it. But I have to say that I look at the stuff that comes on X. I don't sit around watching X all day long, or on Instagram or whatever. And there's some pretty funny stuff that people are making, especially the video. I sent a few to you that really make me laugh when I see them, because they're not long. It's too bad they can't do a longer clip, but they make these funny clips that, So I guess the good news is that this satirical space has really advanced far since I first got started, because a lot of people say, Bill, you were the first one doing political memes, I said, well, I think there were one or two other people doing it when I was doing it, but yeah, I think I really stoked it up in a way.
We call them memes then, yeah. Well, there's another kind of sort of process related question. Mr. House Party 6 wanted to know, why Zero Hedge? What was it about that outlet that made that a good connection for you?
Well, this goes back to the original financial crisis. Remember that?
Barely.
Some people don't even know what it was. They were watching cartoons. But anyway, when that happened, one of the things that, as a lawyer, I found very annoying was listening to people say, oh, this is too complicated. You can't possibly understand this. Only someone who's been trained as a this or that, and that number one is the way to get me started. Whenever someone says you can't possibly, I just say, you know what? I can read, I got a brain, I can understand, Do I want to understand everything about it? No, I just need to understand enough that satisfies me so that I feel like whatever it is I need to do with that information, I can do. So there was this sudden thirst for information that was, I'm going to say objective, but was not geared towards basically justifying or trying to,
not propaganda.
Create another narrative about, oh, this no one could possibly have, no one ever did. The guy wrote the book, The Black Swan. How could we possibly know? I said, no, you knew. Not only did you know, you did things in advance of other people that actually only someone who knew would do. So we know that you knew. Anyway, Zero Hedge, searching for good information is how I wound up at Zero Hedge, because not only was someone named Tyler Durden obviously someone who was analytically a genius in this space. The space has transformed itself into a lot of other different things. But the basic fundamentals of finance and trading, this guy, no one would argue with me. I mean, it's like he is, able to write things that are a pleasure to read if you have a thirst for understanding and quickly, yeah? And not only that, the people that were in the comment sections, because we had this whole Fight Club thing going, which a lot of people have sort of forgotten about, but yeah, we had this Fight Club thing, and we had a lot of, interesting discussions, and people would post very lengthy, some of them, it's too lengthy, it's not fun to look at that in the comment thread, but very thoughtful comments that were interesting to read. And I made a lot of friends. Some of them disappeared, I know they're out there somewhere, but we all went through that together. Yeah. And that's how I wound up on Zero Hedge, because I had already started a blog, which is still there somewhere in the Google sphere, I realized this is not, no one's reading this. You can see how many people are opening the page. I said, this is sort of like a waste of time. This is like I'm talking to myself. I don't need to do that. I do that anyway while I'm walking around. I don't need to type. And then I said to myself, well, I'm gonna, because I'm a photographer. At that point, I was already very familiar with how to, manipulate images and Photoshop things and this and that. And I just said, I'm going to try this. I'm going to do satire instead. And I started posting links to that because, I was posting links to pictures that were on Flickr. Right. And then another guy who was publishing on Zero Hedge at the time, everyone knows him as Mr. and Mrs. Cognitive Dissonance. He did a lot of very nice posts way back when. They're both very busy now living their lives, very interesting lives, but he took a liking to what I was doing. along with other people who were just commenting underneath. And he probably I know he did. He sent the message to Tyler, why don't you give this guy contribution rights? So that's when it took off, because suddenly
Nice.
I could do posts, and everybody, it was pretty funny what I was doing. Some of it was primitive, but because I really didn't know what I was doing. But
Do you remember some of your first ones?
it's all in the Flickr, going.
I know, but do you?
And what happened was the first ones I was doing the mortgage, the mortgage factory. I was doing like these elaborate, I like diagrams, the old-fashioned diagrams, and I was taking those and I was, taking industrial factory diagrams and this and that and converting them into mortgage factories, and everybody looked at that because, yeah, I understood immediately after I looked at what was going on. So I was making these funny pictures of about, of that. And this back then, I was also doing other funny things. I was rewriting classical poetry and posting it on Dealbook and Financial Times and Business Week. And actually, Business Week had this thing. They had a dinner where they invited the 80 most influential or commenters on Business Week. And I didn't make it to the dinner, but later I was in New York City and I met the people who organized it. They gave me all these gifts. It was pretty funny. So I was already doing other things, and I had the time. The only reason I was doing it was because I had the time. I was busy transitioning my life, which is another.
This was when you had left your job as a lawyer and you were moving out of New York City?
What happened was, in my case, I can't say that everything was planned, but I was in a transitional phase of my life, and I thought that I would get back into some angle of finance, and then the market blew up, and every discussion I was having and what have you, evaporated quickly or was suspended. And then I said to myself, after looking at what happened, I said, I'm really not interested in this anymore because I don't agree with it. One of the things was I said to myself, this makes a farce of everything that goes on, kind of, because these people are toiling at the printer or this or that, worrying about, technical disclosures and what have you, and then when something goes bang and billions of dollars disappear, all those rules don't matter anymore because it's a crisis and we need to just fix it, right? So no one's held accountable. And then if you're someone who spent a significant portion of your life working on that kind of stuff, you got to shake your head and say, why am I doing it? What purpose does that serve?
Right.
So anyway, getting back to Zero Hedge, that's how I wound up on Zero Hedge. And then so I quickly realized, because I looked at other platforms, that the main thing that was of great importance to me was that there was no censorship. There were no filters that I needed to deal with. Even after, they started giving them a hard time, because in the beginning, we had regular Google ads running, and they were doing very well, Some people were complaining and saying it's ironic that on this website we're looking at Citibank ads or this or that. And I'm thinking, it costs money to run this website. Regardless of what people think, it costs a lot of money to run a website like this. And he's entitled to make a living because whoever it is, Mr. Durden, has his own family and his own responsibilities and et cetera, and no one can do anything for free except for maybe Elon Musk. So. By the way, this is one of the reasons why the situation with Politico and Business Insider is very interesting. Is because what happened to them and what happened to Tyler Durden. Okay, whoever started those other ones are billionaires or millionaires or whatever, right? But Mr. Tyler Durden is still here doing this. Okay, he must be a very committed, serious person who believes in what he's doing, because he isn't selling, right? Mm-hmm. Who knows? If someone offers him $1 billion, who knows what he'll do? But in the meantime, and so I just said to myself, look, I have this platform which I know gets a lot of traffic, and it is the audience that I want to look. I want looking at my pictures. So why am I going to go do something else? So I stayed.
Right.
And then as
Right.
the heat started getting hot, because as you know, it turned from not just finance into politics and this and that. We don't need to go through the whole decade because all the people who are watching know what I'm talking about. But the whole thing transformed into another, universe of, politics, which I don't particularly enjoy, and like everybody else, we just want to. And the censorship issue just became very, very important. I just said, this is a place where I can put any picture I want, and no one is going to give me a hard time about it.
Yeah. And
I
your
was
pictures
worried
really
that someone would
are.
try to cancel them.
Your pictures really are no holds barred. I mean, and you have an equal opportunity approach to, you kind of have a dig at everyone. But do you have any internal filters that you use? Not to say that you self-censor, but
Yeah, look, I was raised by two parents who were extraordinary, and one of the things was manners. You just have to be a decent person. You can't. There's certain things that I really don't feel like doing. That if I looked somewhere else, somebody would be doing that, and I just think, that's bad taste. I don't want to do that. That's not why I'm doing this. So, scatological or whatever, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be afraid of slapping people who deserve to be slapped in a way that, some other, snowflakes might not like. Because, I think they deserve what they get,
Right. Yeah,
Like
Mr.
Fauci,
House
for
Party says
example.
the Hunter Biden ones were brutally funny. Yeah, but I mean,
well,
the whole zombie series, those were pretty brutal as well. But you're right.
But,
I mean, these are
it's just
public
like
figures.
See, someone would take a picture of Fauci or whoever, Bill Gates, and turn him into a zombie and say, ha, ha, ha. That's not good enough, It's got, the picture has to have something else in it that really reflects who is this person and why is he a zombie, And so that's what my zombie series, I just said, all right, I'm going to do everybody as a zombie now. I got nothing else to do. It's COVID time. By the way, where I was in Hong Kong, we were never locked down. We were able to move around freely the whole time. I actually was doing things. Ironically, I was doing online tours for Amazon, but kept me very busy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
But anyway, I did have more time, desk time, and so I just said, okay, now I'm going to do everybody. It's zombie, and I do like that.
Yeah.
When I go back now, and I've reached the point now. You talk about it's always difficult for people who are artists to curate their own work because they're too attached to what they've done. And now I've just got so much that I will go back to the very beginning and I'll look at things and see, did I do that? I don't remember it. That's pretty funny, And I was also thinking, I reached a certain point where I technically was sort of satisfied with the way things looked, the way I was producing them. And when I go back and look at some of these pictures, I say, I don't think I could improve that. It's like that's pretty good, and maybe change a couple of the faces or names because of the way events have panned out. But by and large, I'm happy with it. So I don't.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned AI earlier, and one of our commenters from the Freedom Conversation podcast says, if AI can ruin art in 6 months, what is it going to do in the long term? This is someone whose entire podcast is focused on transhumanism and just everything about AI and how it's changing our society. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I have two thoughts. Number one, and I was involved with computers very early on, not at the very, very beginning, but my first computer was an Atari 600, So, and then I started using them for my work, which involved flying around to all kinds of emerging markets in Central Europe where, you come through the airport and you have I can't even remember what the name was, a Japanese company, Toshiba. I had a Toshiba, and it was DOS, so I was using WordPerfect, and but nevertheless, I used to carry it around in a silver briefcase, because it would get banged around. I was traveling a lot, and every time I would go to customs and they would open this thing up and look at that, it was like, oh, they never saw anything like. And then I had an HP portable printer, Anyway, getting back to technology. When they said back then this is going to change the world, no one had any idea, right, how the world would change. And then the futurists have their own idea, Isaac Asimov and what have you. This all interests me very much from when I was in college, and I studied a lot of philosophy and this and that, and the idea of artificial consciousness, or what is human consciousness, which, by the way, no one has answered. I don't think anybody's going to answer it. Has always interested me, and they all make these predictions about things that are going to happen, and you say, well, I wonder if that's going to happen, and then lo and behold, you get to whatever date they picked, and it hasn't happened. So here we are now, all of a sudden we've got something called artificial intelligence, AI, and we're really not at the stage where whatever it is they've done is sentient, can think, okay? And there are a lot of philosophical discussions about whether, what that means, what is thinking, and is a machine going to be able to do that? And we don't even have to delve into that, but I think we have if that could ever happen, we have anyone who is really, up on this knows that this is like way into the future, That doesn't mean there isn't a danger, because the danger of what we have now is people get lazy and they let this machine, basically execute a bunch of commands. Yeah? It's not like there's some benevolent machine making decisions. It's just a bunch of commands that some woke person typed up, right? And who knows what these commands are going to do in a case, where, a Dr. Strangelove situation, or lots of other different kinds of situations. And I've played around with this. When ChatGPT came out, ChatGPT, I came out and I started playing around. When I played around with the image creation stuff, and I think this is at the point that, let me get this. I'm impressed by what they've done so far, but it is not where they're saying it is. And where they think it's going to go, I think it's way off. And then it brings you back to the simple question, well, what can it do now that's productive? And how do you measure productivity is, well, does it do anything besides generating ad revenue? What can it do, And there's an interesting, this fellow Anderson, the venture capitalist, he's an interesting guy, and one of my zero hedge friends here pointed out that he was talking to this other fellow whose name escapes me, Chema or something. I mean, he's an Indian fellow. He's another venture capitalist in Silicon Valley. No, wait a minute, I'm getting it mixed up. There's Anderson, and then there's this other guy who Tucker Carlson interviewed. He's the interesting for this purpose.
He's
think
saying, he did.
What
Tucker Carlson did talk to
years?
Anderson.
He talked to Anderson too, but there's two different people. But this guy, basically, his during this interview that he did with Tucker Carlson, he basically fessed up and said, what have we done, the technologists in Silicon Valley, for the last 10 years? What have we really done? And his basic answer is nothing. We've squandered, he says, it's our lost decade. We wasted our time on all these other things that, social this and that and blah, 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 DEI. It's like, and what does it all add up to? It adds up to nothing. It's somebody got rich on it, that's all,
Yeah.
And, he's from India. He's, so his zeitgeist is Eastern.
Right.
And it's interesting that this became a revelation for him because all of that stuff that leads to Ferraris and yachts and you know, houses all over the place in Hawaii and this and that means nothing.
Right.
Means nothing. And a lot of them now realize this. You know, what have we accomplished? What has this done for us in life? And, you know, I think that AI is just another wave that Wall Street is basically sponsoring. You know,
that's what I was going to ask you. Do you think we're going to see a burst of an AI bubble the way we saw a burst of a dot-com bubble?
We're already in a bubble. The bubble, you know, somebody.
I mean, it's
pricked
crazy,
the bubble.
the valuations.
Somebody called DeepSeek
Yeah.
pricked the bubble 2 weeks ago, right? I mean, I know a few people who really got hurt by it. You know, it's like, it's just another bubble. It's like green or this or that, blah, blah, blah. They'll find an angle. You know, it's the new thing, right? They, you know, if you don't have a new thing, then you can't do a pitch. You can't come up with a story that you can sell, and you know that's.
Gonna change the world.
On this on zero. Well, I say we here. This is collapse, but you think the same way. You know, it's like we know better. We know the game. They're playing the game, and they're playing the game in AI. That doesn't mean that AI is all schlock, but obviously those clever people in Hangzhou, you know, in China. And people, you know, try to disparage what they did by saying, "Oh, they stole the chips," or this. I said, you know, it's like Apollo, whatever. When they said, you know, we got 6 hours to take this, and make this square fit into this round hole, you know, and so that's great. You know, they did what you would expect people to do that are, you know, laboratory oriented or you know, who make things. They came over with a workaround, and of course, it doesn't fit in with this, you know, expectation of raising billions and billions of dollars to build all these data centers. You know, they just proved that, you know, there's something much more efficient and elegant that can be done. They made their point, and not only that, they said we're not going to protect it as IP. We're going to make it, you know, open source. Wow, that's like a big slap. They're saying, you know, that model that you're using. Well, here. Boom, open source, you know, it's like,
yeah, it's
you gotta
crazy.
laugh at these things, you know, and I say, you know, when that happened, that was not an accident as far as I'm concerned, that came out, you know, right before Chinese New Year's of the Year of the Snake, you know, and, you know, the big guy, Mr. Trump, had just announced his other deal, you know, with, I didn't even pay attention to what it was. They had some announcement that was a bunch of sound bites, right, about AI.
Yeah.
And Musk criticized it and this and that. And anyway, I think the people who are involved in this space have to go back and reflect on what it is they're trying to do and the right way to do it, because obviously there was a frenzy that was created somehow by somebody.
Our producer pointed out that I think the interview that you were referring to was with Chamath. Is that right?
Yeah.
I can try to say his last name, Chamath Palihapitiya.
Palihapitiya, yeah.
Is that right?
Anyway, he's people can find it. I put the links up on my post. He's an interesting guy, and I think that if, as he says, there are more than just a few of us out here who realize this, I think that's a good thing. That's a very good thing, because he admitted that up until now, if you're looking at the last 10 or 15 years, well, 10 years, he says the only guy who's really done anything is the guy who's able to, you know, catch rocket ships with a claw. You know. He's the genius who's out there doing things. You know, he's got his satellites up there. I mean, he you know. Do
you think he's a genius,
made a great
Bill?
point. I don't know. What's the definition of genius? He's just a brilliant person.
Do you think?
You know,
I mean, do you think he's behind all of these things?
I think he's a very, you know, in order to be able to be involved at that level with these things, you need to have a certain level of comprehension and mastery and able to be involved in those things. But he is obviously someone who knows how to lead people so that they can do that. He knows how to, allocate his time and effort and where problems arise or where he needs to go in and eat a lot of pizza and stay up all night. He knows where he has to go to do that. And right now he's doing it in Washington, D.C.
Right.
Yeah?
What do you
So-
say to all the people who say, I didn't vote for Elon?
Well, they can say that, but it was pretty clear in the news that he was heavily involved, with the whole MAGA, with Trump. I don't know, yeah, I guess you could say MAGA, but I don't like really, even though I have this hat that I had made here in Bangkok. I don't think this is the main point, MAGA, but I agree with Make America Great Again, and I think that he understood completely what that means, and he demonstrated it when he went and did his takeover of Twitter. Yeah, he did it. This was, you'll recall that I did a picture of the Statue of Liberty with a shadow of the Twitter bird covering the face and lips stitched together. I was really like everybody else. Not that Twitter was the only one, but it was like the most egregious example that was in front of everybody at the time. And I remember, I have friends who are, lawyers, obviously, and we're discussing the whole theory of how the First Amendment could possibly be used as an argument, against censorship. And lo and behold, the opponents, the other side, came up with the whole rationale. It's like when he got in there and exposed everything, we suddenly saw that, how the government was involved. And that's wrong, right? It's absolutely not right. And that was a tremendous service that he performed by doing that. And now he'll probably make money on it, because a lot of people said, you're never going to make money on this. But now that all these different barriers are dropping, and I hope it helps Zero Hedge too, a lot of the sponsors of ad revenue are going to come back onto Twitter, and Twitter is going to do very well, Mm-hmm. So, and now doing in the last 2 weeks, a lot of people are dizzy. They just can't believe what's happened. And I'm watching, and I shake my head thinking, this just demonstrates how much of what we call the swamp or the deep state or the beltway or, all that wealth in Washington, D.C. was just created it wasn't even created by laws. It was, executive fiat, creating these different agencies or expanding into areas that were never, delegated by Congress, or specified in any law, and hiring all kinds of people to do these things, and it winds up being billions and then trillions. And suddenly somebody comes in and pulls the plug and all the air starts coming out. That's what we're watching now, and they're all flabbergasted, and confused that this could actually happen. But that's what's happening. Yeah. When he can go in, USAID, if you go and look at the history of USAID, it just so happens that years ago I had a greater familiarity with the kinds of people and how that worked. A lot of them are just contractors.
Yeah.
This is like a goose that lays golden eggs, and they have RFPs for, think this needs to be done in this country or this needs to be done in that country. And way back when George Bush, not W, but George, was president, that was when the wall came down, and then the question became, well, what should USAID be doing in Central Europe? Because now all of a sudden all these former Soviet economies are now so-called free, or supposed to be free markets. What kind of technical assistance, this and that. But the argument back then about USAID was that it was inefficient and it was not it was basically government people getting involved in things that they knew nothing about.
Right.
Okay, and so they passed something called the Support for Eastern European Democracy Act, where they raised private money And they got people who were venture capital or finance people from Wall Street to manage it. And there were, Congress allocated a couple $100 million, and they went and raised private funds to match, and they invested it, venture capital style, where people with ideas were forced to write business plans, and there were committees that looked at the business plans to decide which ones were viable, this and that. So this was something that everybody was looking at. See, that's the way to do financial foreign assistance, okay? Not having a bureaucracy where there are all these other people who want to, sign contracts so that they can make money as consultants and this and that. But now it's transformed itself into something completely different, okay? We see that it is basically an ideological platform, okay? That, they're getting involved in things that, taxpayers, I was thinking the other day, what is the right way? What is the premise that should be followed in this? And if you were given money by the U.S. government, taxpayer money, you shouldn't be using that money to drive someone else's agenda. You should only be using that money to basically, A, help the people who need help, and B, if you want to create some kind of a soft diplomacy, benefit, it should really only involve things that we as a country are all in agreement on. You say,
Right.
well, we're
Our
not in agreement
values
about
and-
anything
yeah.
anymore. Yeah, our values,
Yeah. Yeah.
But let's start with the Constitution. Let's say, let's decide what it is. What does it mean to be an American? Because that, and if somebody says, well, that's one of the things we do, I would say, well, that's more power to you, everybody loves the country. Yeah, let's show the rest of it. And this is the idea that Kennedy had. They're all blathering about Kennedy founded USAID, blah, 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 Okay. The idea that he originally had was, this was at the very beginning of the Cold War in the 50s, around when I was born, right? And the big thing was either you're them or you're with us. Either you're with the Soviets or you're with us, right? There's no in between. And there were all these different places like Indonesia and Cambodia and Vietnam that wanted to be non-aligned, and we were saying, no, you can't be non-aligned. And not only are we not going to, back then they were doing economic sanctions. They were saying, all right, we're gonna send people, and a lot of terrible things happened. And yes, millions of people were slaughtered, Yeah. If you go and look at it, that's what happened. Look at what happened in Indonesia, that they called the Jakarta model, and ironically, who was behind what happened there, who fed all the information to Suharto's regime so that they could go and do this cleansing, of leftists, but lots of other people, you see, what happens. And it was the CIA. Yeah.
One of the things that I think is good about what's happening right now, in spite of all the chaos that's being stirred up in DC, is that there's suddenly this transparency about bureaucracies that no American was really paying attention to. So there's a little bit of maybe accountability, shining light in dark corners and helping people to see that there were big portions of this government that nobody had a clue about. And I was just going to say, just to kind of bring this back to the work that you do on a regular basis, to what extent do you think that your work also kind of pushes a bit of an accountability agenda, because you're skewering things that rightly need to be skewered, but helps people to understand that there's a big pig that needs to be poked?
Yeah, I suppose in my case, I haven't had time to delve very far into the details other than looking at who's the guy at the top now, who's creating the momentum for this, besides the president. Yeah, of course, it's Trump and it's the other fellow, Vivek. And I mean, they have, obviously, it's not the two of them. They have a whole team. You can't do something like this unless you've got top-notch lawyers, you've got people who've worked in those agencies and know what's there. It's not like you can just, otherwise you're not going to get anywhere. They know exactly where they're going and what they're looking for. Yeah?
Yeah.
And you look at the lists that get published now of all these different government agencies and offices and this and that, and you say, this is like unbelievable. This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
What
we didn't even know they
what's
existed.
That? Who? Yeah, no one knows it. Yeah, it's like, but all we know is it's trillions and trillions of dollars of interest on interest and this and that now, and it's bankrupting the country, and it's sort of, and we're watching now in real time how easy, well, it's not easy, but it's very, it just goes to show, if you're going to be clever, you're going to think out of the box and you're going to approach things. Like this whole business about buyout offers. I said, that is genius. Yeah? We're going to go in and we're going to offer buyouts to all these people because it's cheaper to just buy them out than to keep paying them for staying home and doing nothing. Yeah? That's sort of like you're making a decision. Well, it's going to cost us, but in the end, it's like restructuring a bankrupt or an insolvent corporation. We need to cut the fat off. We need to get rid of it. It's otherwise we're just going to sink. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're doing it to the CIA. To the CIA, they're doing it. They're doing it to everybody. Of course, all the unions, the government unions and everything, they're telling their people, oh, you shouldn't take these deals, blah, blah, blah. Like unions always say, we get you a better deal. But, they're, first of all, I haven't studied what the deal is, but for someone who's sitting at home in underwear mode since COVID and not coming in and doesn't feel like coming in, if all of a sudden someone says, all right, look, just sign the piece of paper, terminate yourself without prejudice, and here's what we're going to give you, that sounds like a pretty good offer because they don't want to hang around and see what's going to happen. They don't want somebody to say, put your pants on and get to work tomorrow. They don't want to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah. There was an interesting question from Erica who wrote to us before the live started, and she's calling out an inherent optimism that she sees in your work. She asks, were you ever cynical? Because there's an inherent optimism to still fighting and expecting integrity.
At the very beginning, I was a little bit idealistic. I suppose I still am, but I've toned it down. And this was because of my parents. Because my mom was always someone who was always think positive, and I do believe that. In my personal life now, everything is think positive and only positive things are going to happen. I do believe that. Even though there may be certain disappointments and setbacks, overall, if you're a positive thinking person, you're gonna move ahead. You're gonna move forward. So it's like the simple suggestion: write your congressman. That's going to make a difference. Well, the cynic is going to say that's not going to make any difference at all. Why bother? They're all uniparty, And I guess what I learned from my dad is, you can say that. It's easy to say that, but the truth is that there is somebody who opens up the mail and has to read what it says. And they may not agree with it. They may crinkle it up and throw it in the trash, but they know in the back of their head, hey, we received 1,000 letters or whatever from people in our district that said this. We need to pay attention to that because, that come the next, election cycle, that's going to affect us. Mm-hmm. And, when the thing turns into a huge behemoth, it becomes more and more difficult for individuals to say anything and try to feel like they're having some sort of influence. But I think we're back in a period in the US now where everyone should be speaking up and letting the schlemiels know, I'm not going to sit around doing nothing next time. Not only am I going to go into the election booth, but, I'm going to really focus on getting other people to do the same, not necessarily trying to convert people who are with you because it's very difficult trying to convert people, but getting people who have been apathetic about it previously off their asses and in, I think that's what happened this time. I think that, there's always this talk about the silent majority. I think there is a silent majority, and I think they finally got agitated into expressing themselves, and this is the end result.
Yeah.
So I am optimistic because of that.
I think that's great.
I'm not a
It's
cynic.
actually kind of a rare tone at this point, given
Well-
how much else we're hearing from, these apocalyptic messages from
Let-
others. So.
Let me just
Go
say
ahead.
something else. People, when you talk about being cynical, I am not cynical myself. Yes, I'm not. People might think this guy is a cynic, but I'm not cynical. I am somebody who, I believe in the Socratic method. I believe in asking questions and not accepting anything on its face, and being realistic about when you see something. Don't try to dress it up as something else. And let me put it this way. People who look at my pictures know that when I put a picture up, it is not all negative energy because I want to disparage other people and I enjoy being negative. I don't enjoy being negative. I enjoy making people feel good, feel happy, even though it's difficult. That's what a comedian does, make people laugh. Yeah, that's the reality of it, but we can get a laugh out of it, can't we? We can, and there was a lot of that during the past 15 years, and I felt a strong urge, not an obligation, but maybe an obligation. I felt a connection, a commitment to people I knew were watching or looking at my posts a long time, and I read all the comments, and I don't answer all of them, but I noticed that lots of people say, thank you very much. You really, you made my day, or you've helped me get through a dark period in my life, or what have you. And a lot of people, you think that's an exaggeration. A lot of people are really affected by these things, these events. Economically, personally, in their family life and everything else. They've struggled. And you wake up in the morning and it's easy to get depressed if you have to dwell on that, and if all of a sudden you open it up on Sunday morning or Monday, whatever, and you see this picture and it makes you laugh and it sets the tone for your day. If I have a mission, that's my mission. Okay, that's the main mission. Okay,
Yeah.
why I do this.
What
And I
makes you
understand.
laugh, Bill?
Yeah. What makes me laugh?
Yeah.
Serendipity, just accidental events that I can't it's difficult for me to just say one thing makes me laugh. But when I see, that's what humor is. It's something unexpected, right? All of a sudden you see something and you laugh. You have to, now there's a guy who's I guess he's from the Caribbean or wherever. He's on Instagram, and he does whiteboard, sort of like he's giving a lecture in a classroom, a professor, and he does these mathematical jokes that are really funny. Some of them are, people might get offended by them, but you look at him and you say, look, this guy, he's a black fellow from the Caribbean, and he's got a really good sense of humor, and he makes me laugh because he does these things that are completely, he takes you, he'll just say, how does 69 equal 3, whatever, and he'll do this diagram, and then you look at it and you just have to laugh at it, where he's got this thing, the right brain lobe and the left brain lobe, and how the brain lobes are arranged in men and women. And it's just very funny that, the way he does it, so I don't know. But I have to tell you that after George Carlin left, I can't really point, someone knows someone that I should be looking at, to any comedian, mainstream comedian, stand-up comic who is really in this space, that, basically on our side of the table, or whatever you want to call it, the river.
Sure.
I don't see anybody who has the guts to stand up and do it yet. Who there's no Richard Pryor. There's no George Carlin. There's, it's where is that person? Where is the young comedian comedian who's doing that really is going to make us all out. I don't see that person yet. I hope that person arrives. But
Yeah. No, I think it's true the past few years throughout all walks of the art world. I mean, where were the musicians standing up and making music about what was going on? Where were the comedians? Where was there was very little of that happening. There were a few standouts for sure, but you would have thought that there would
by
have
and
been
large,
this
they're
mass
all whores.
rebellion.
They're all whores. Yeah.
Is that because the
whores.
industry has changed in that way? That, you know, people need their because they can't make it otherwise, you know, they need their contracts and their sponsors and all of that.
Yeah, well, the big fish have a lot of money, and they need more money to support their lifestyle. Yeah, and so there's the musicians, and then there's the performers, and the actors, and
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at those people, and when you listen to them try to explain their position, you say, well, I'm sorry, this is not a person I would listen to for this purpose. You know, this person has nothing to contribute. They're all like that. So
Yeah.
I mentioned this on one of the other interviews. They're basically beholden to the people who they rely on for revenue,
Yeah.
and they have to act the part. And if they don't act the part, or they have the nerve to actually, go off script and have their own opinion, they're punished.
Of course. Yeah, we've seen that.
And
Yeah.
I think the pinnacle example of this is Sasha Stone from Awards Daily, somebody I've known on the internet for quite a few years, who, Matt Taibbi became aware of what happened to her, but, it's this whole Hollywood shtick where they punished her because during COVID, she started asking questions that weren't part of the approved narrative, and as she started catching flack, she went deeper and deeper, into the dark side, in other words, where we were, and started asking more questions. And so, this is not right-wing extremism, this is like right-wing light or whatever, whatever you want to call us, deplorable, and they punished her, no more, because she has this blog award, the site, this Awards Daily, which is sort of like a fan, it's a prediction site for the Oscars, so she's very busy this month, yeah. And this turned into her living, and they punished her. They basically canceled her. Said she's not invited to any more screenings or events or this or that, which really is like, cutting off someone's leg if that's their livelihood. These people are spiteful.
Yeah.
They don't believe you're entitled to your own opinion. You only agree with them, and if you don't, well, too bad. She tried to bifurcate, her setup so that she was not espousing her political views on Awards Daily, which I think is very important. I think these people in Hollywood all need to understand that their audience is not interested in their political
And what
views
they think about things, yeah.
She had like a secret Substack or whatever, and someone who she thought was a friend put two and two together, and then it leaked out. And of course, she was a little bit, it's kind of like me, it's like you don't want to bifurcate your whole life, become schizophrenic, You try to be careful, but then, ultimately it comes out. And if you're in a position where you're very, very visible and you're relying on the public for participation in whatever your business model is, someone can really hurt you. And she got hurt, And I just sent her when I saw, I wasn't aware of that, but when Taibbi wrote his piece about her, he interviewed her, and I became aware of this. I just said, this is unacceptable, and it's completely consistent with what we would all expect, knowing Hollywood's behavior for the last 10, 15 years. And I just said, you've got a better life ahead.
That's nice.
Yes, the better things going to happen. People are going to know that you're going to find out, just like I did and other people did. There are a lot of good people who are going to help you because you did the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Integrity.
You spoke up. Yeah.
Yeah. We have a comment here. Would you say your philosophy is we laugh so we don't cry?
Laughter is a person's cry for help. Isn't that what the saying is? We laugh so we don't cry. Yeah, that's pretty dramatic. But I guess laughter is an escape. Yeah?
Yeah.
It is.
I do think
You have a
you've
smile
mastered
on
the
your face.
art of putting unexpected things in your work, which is really what makes it so.
If it's not unexpected, it's not worth bothering with, as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned. Whenever I do a picture, the first thing I do when I have an idea is I do a search to see if anybody else did that. And if somebody else did it, I lose interest. I'll do something else. I learned that from Stanley Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick, who I had a brief exposure to. He had me looking for something in Central Europe, and I fed him information.
No.
And Schindler's List, he found out that Schindler's List was coming out. And then he just said, no, okay, my project, I'm not going to do that because
Interesting. Because it's already been
Schindler's
done.
List is coming out and I don't want to overlap with him. Yeah, so I understand, you know, part of the thing of really being creative is you don't want to, the only time I'm going to take something and use it is I'm going to make it better. I'm going to take something that someone came up with an idea or whatever, and I'm going to execute it in another way, and it's going to be better. And I'll give credit to that person for coming up with the idea, but yeah, I'm going to make it better.
Yeah.
So,
Do you ever find, like I think many of us do these days, when you see something in the news, in the so-called news, sometimes these things seem so fantastical that you don't even know if they're true. Do you ever find that? And how do you kind of balance out, like, being quick, which you said, you know, and it's true, you're prolific and you're very fast in reacting, but do you ever balance that out with, like, how do I triangulate this to make sure that it's correct?
well, one of the things that Zero Hedge, the people on Zero Hedge helped me with was my skepticism of many things that were suggested. You know, you have this whole umbrella of conspiracy theories, right?
Yes.
I hate that. That's an expression that was invented by the intelligence agencies in the U.S., conspiracy there, right around the time of the Kennedy assassinations, right?
Yeah.
And I just learned on Zero Hedge to have an open mind, you know, because we had all these discussions about 9/11, for example. In the very beginning, there were lots of discussions about 9/11, every possible angle. Smart people, engineers, architects, you know, I mean, just people who knew what they were talking about. But there were other people who were coming up with different scenarios. I'm not going to call them conspiracy theories, scenarios. And I just learned it's better to have an open mind because you're just going to cut off all kinds of possibilities that, you know, as we now know, turned out to be true, you know.
Yeah.
And there is craziness out there, and whenever people send me emails or I see things on other websites, things have said on Zero Hedge, some things, of course, I'll look at it and say, well, that's ridiculous, you know. You know, we're not being controlled by aliens at this time. I just don't believe that, you know. Maybe we are, but I'm not ready to believe that quite yet. But I will look at these things and say, well, what is going on there, you know? And maybe it's something other than what we think is going on there, and our attention is being drawn to it because someone has come up with a theory or an explanation, you know. And of course, what's his name? InfoWars.
Alex Jones.
Yeah, he's one of the guys that comes off, you know, he says things and you think, wow, this is really, he's you know, He's got a few loose screws. But, a lot of things that he says are correct, and so he pushes the envelope. He's edgy, so there were many others, when you start getting into things about, fifth generation cellular
Warfare?
phone. Yeah,
5G, yeah.
5G, and all this other stuff. I don't know if everything that they say is correct, but there are things that they are saying that involve technical. I used to have a ham radio license. It's like, how does the electromagnetic radiation from all these devices affect people? I think there's more to it than our betters want us to know.
Yeah.
Although now it's coming out. Yeah. If you went and got a ham radio license 20, 30 years ago, they taught you, one of the first things they taught you was how to hold a handset, because it's the same frequencies as we now have in cell phones. Yeah. They tell you not to put the handset next to your head. That's what they told you. Right. Don't, And now all of a sudden it's okay for everybody to have the handset next to their head. How is that affecting, And then it's like people think, it's the radiation. What does that mean? It's the wavelength of the device. You have ultra high frequency, very high frequency, or whatever, resonates with different parts of the body, because it's literally measuring, the wavelength and parts of your ear or your inner ear or your brain or this and that, And when you have this electromagnetic, radiation, one of the things that happens if you get in front of a radar dish is you burn. Yeah. You burn up, So, I don't think it's a good idea to hold your cell phone like that. There are other people now who are focused on whatchamacallit, on not Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. All these Bluetooth plugs that everybody's wearing now. Is that healthy? I don't know. There are probably people who don't want you to ask that question.
Yeah.
So.
There's a question here from Glenn Stefanovich. He asks, what motivates your art streaks? In the early 2010s, you blasted out streams of sharp visual commentary. Then there was a drought in the latter 2010s, and then an uptick in the 2020s.
So what motivates me? Well, one thing that motivates me is time. We only have so much time. And if I'm going to sit and I'm really just going to, there were times when I had more time on my hands. And I was able to sit and just basically almost live stream, watch what was coming down the news feed and instantly do pictures in response. There was a period when we were able to post pictures in the comment thread on Zero Hedge, which they did away with. And I was able to, look at the comments and what people were saying and what we were looking at, and I was able to just like instantly come up with pictures that were funny. That was the way I was interacting in the comment thread. And then, of course, the whole stage transformed itself from finance into becoming more politicized, because we suddenly realized that finance and politics, of course, can't be separated. And that started taking more time, and I started addressing that, but at the same time, I have another life. At that time, I was busy with my work, and of course, that takes priority. And so when you get home at night and you're tired because you've been walking all day like I do, you have your dinner and you lay down and you conk out. But of course, if there's a picture I really would feel needed to be done, I would do it. Then, of course, we had 2016, and the big guy got in, and I thought we were going to be in a similar period now, where I felt like, okay, there was this problem, and now all of a sudden there's been a change, and the problem is going to be maybe not entirely addressed, but someone's working on it, so I can ease off the pedal. Yeah. So that combined with work, it wasn't like I said, I don't want to do this anymore, because there are other people who would post regularly on Zero Hedge. And they disappeared. I know why they disappeared, because they have other things to do in life. Especially if you're young, you've got kids, you need to look at everything that you're doing. And the main thing is, am I providing? And, am I basically meeting my responsibilities?
Right.
Is this an activity that allows me to meet my responsibility? That's what you need to deal with. That's the reality. During that period, I was not a full-time artist making income from being an artist. It's sort of like you got to find other ways to work. I don't like to call it work, but I think you need to love what you're doing. Mm. You only have so much time, so that's the reason. Then, once we figured out what was really happening with this Russiagate and everything, that of course pulled me back in again, because I said, well, this is wrong. We can't just sit around and watch this. So I started addressing that, and then all of a sudden we had COVID, and I said, this is absolutely upside down, completely wrong. And now all of a sudden I have a lot of time, so all of a sudden lots and lots of pictures again are being produced by me. Yeah. And then, we went through the whole fiasco that we had now for the last 4 years, and of course I couldn't keep my mouth shut during that fiasco, because that was like complete, I can't think of anything positive about any of that, Really. I mean, I know there's some things that could be interpreted as positive, but I think that by and large, if you look at the ultimate outcome of what happened there, negative, one big negative. He deserves to be known as the worst president ever, because he wasn't even the president. It was somebody else in the background. We've seen we've seen what can happen. Never thought anything like this would ever happen in my life. I'm sure everybody else feels the same. It's sort of like, I got a good example. Last year I had cancer. It's like, I dealt with it, okay? I'm fine now. That's what they say. But when all of a sudden someone says, yeah, you got cancer, it's like all of a sudden, you're looking at everything and you're thinking, well, this is serious, now it counts, I think the same thing we went through, it's like one by one, whatever it is that is your pet peeve, whether it's the Second Amendment or the First Amendment. For me, it's the First Amendment, and I don't believe that the whole world needs to accept what we as Americans believe about free speech. I don't think we should be preaching to anybody, I think that's part of the problem that we have, that has led to where we are now, which is mind our own business, yeah? Mm-hmm. And it's like dominoes, watching, these different things, freedoms or whatever, that are near and dear, are suddenly getting choked. And you see that happening, and it's like being told you have a disease. It's like, oh, we need to deal with this. This is serious.
Right.
And someone needs to be the brave one to step up, who has the resources, because there are a lot of other brave people who don't have the resources. Someone needs to step up and basically, start speaking out, like Mr. Trump. Mm-hmm. Somebone has to put his money where his mouth is, like Mr. Musk, and get the ball rolling, And so it's not, I personally don't feel like, well, now the ball is rolling and there's nothing to be done. I don't believe that. I think, and everybody is going to say, and I've asked myself, everybody should be asking themselves, what am I going to do now? I'm looking at this, what am I going to do? And I have an answer for you. I'm going to say, you know what? You might have an argument with your wife or your cousins or this or that, and your family be completely busted up. Don't even try to deal with that. Take a look at the younger generations that are now open, who suddenly, by some miracle, have become aware of this, and obviously they went in the right direction. and find other people who are, that generation, similar generations, young people, and in a way that's not lecturing like an old man like me, open them up to help them to find the path. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Because you think about it, there's nobody in the schools. Maybe there are a few, but they're having a hard time, in the universities or in the in the public schools. Anybody who wants to open up their mind has these administrators that are completely fanatical, are going to hurt them. So they can't. So how are the kids where are they going to get this knowledge passed on? And what knowledge is it? It's the genius that makes this country great. That's the knowledge. Okay? We all understand the basic premises, And you can't listen to people saying, "Oh, you're an old man. What do you know?" Or, "You're an old lady. You don't know." Or, "You're my mom and dad. I don't listen to mom and dad." It's sort of like it doesn't matter. You need to keep at it. You need to, And then there's one other thing. And now we can play the clip if Stephen's watching.
Yeah.
Steve?
It's not important that you become a good fighter in this world. And it's not important that you become a good spiritual guide in this world. It's important that you find a way to live a pleasant life and, in the best case, support other people that they also find the same. This is what it's about. No matter in which form you put it and from cultural background you put it. The main idea is, if you don't find this way of reducing the suffering of your surrounding, your suffering won't stop.
Wow.
Well, I don't think I could put it better than he does. He's a Shaolin monk. He's an interesting guy. Shi Zhengyi, I think it is. He's from, I believe he's from Taiwan, but he had another career, and in his 30s he decided he wanted to become a monk. Mm-hmm. And he has a monastery, not a monastery, but a temple or whatever. Yeah, it's a monastery. It's a Shaolin monastery in Germany. Yeah, so he speaks English, German, and Chinese, obviously. And he's a young guy, and I started watching his clips on X and Instagram. And a lot of things he says I'm already familiar with, because I'm out here in the East, and I grew up with that as part of my culture anyway. He's an interesting guy to listen to, and I think that one clip is sort of like a teaser for, he's not saying everybody needs to be a Shaolin monk or this or that. He's basically he does skydiving, he'll do everything. He's also of the philosophy, everybody should try everything once, so he does that. He's an interesting guy. But anyway, I really like that clip because that's really what it's about, isn't it? Yeah. Everybody should be looking at how they can help other people who are suffering. Yeah. That's what it's about.
How do you think being based in Asia changes how you view what's going on overall in the world and what's going on here in America? You're not here, but you're obviously actively paying attention on a daily basis, but you're based elsewhere, and so you're surrounded by a different culture and a different outlook. How do you think that changes things?
It's not just Asia. It's like I left the U.S. in '91. In my career path, I spent 12 years in different parts of Europe. I know Europe very well. I know Germany quite well. I know Britain, United Kingdom very well. The city of London I know very well. I know Central Europe quite well. All these places, Kiev and Moscow and Warsaw, all places I've been to, on business errands. And now I'm here in Asia, and I think the important thing that I realized is, I always thought of myself, well, I'm an American, but I'm an Asian American, because my mom was Japanese. My father was American. Yeah, actually, he was German American in terms of ancestry, but he was an American. They met when he was in the Air Force during the Korean War. And so there's this part of me that's definitely Asian. And so this latter part of my life, I'm out here. And so, yeah, I am the living example of East meets West, I think, from both directions. And on top of that, I'm just someone who's been out of the country for, since 91, and seen a lot of things. And I'm not someone who renounced his citizenship. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a U.S. passport holder, but I'm also a permanent resident of Hong Kong. I'm in Bangkok right now as we speak for 4 weeks because I have family down here, and lately I've been spending quite a bit of time up in Japan because it's actually cheaper for me to go to Japan and hang around in Japan right now because of the way the yen is. And anyway, look, I'm not some sort of genius, but I'm definitely someone who looks at what's going on from a different angle, A, because I'm able to take the temperature there and outside. And B is I'm not so much involved in all the flag waving and rah-rah,
Right.
I've never been to one of these MAGA events or anything like that. That doesn't
Right.
mean I wouldn't have a good time, but I'm not sort of in that frenzy. I don't really want to be, and so that's how I formulate my opinions.
Yeah.
I'll admit that in '91 when I first went out, I was in Central Europe and the wall came down. Yeah, I was a flag waver. I was busy telling everybody, explaining to young lawyers and business professionals at different types of seminars and what have you that were sponsored by different organizations. What is market capitalism? How does it work? What is the American idea of liberalism? Little did I know where that was going to lead, but what is this notion of liberalism and why this worked for us? And so yeah, this was a period of 10 years in the 90s when we were all enthralled and we wanted the rest of the world to be enthralled by our success. I am very disappointed about where this has all led. I'm very disappointed. I hope we can correct course because it has certainly not led to where I thought it was going to lead. I thought it was going to lead to a better world, and in some respects maybe we live in a better world, but if you're going to measure it in terms of how many lives have been lost and how many lives are still being lost, I don't think we live in a better world now.
Yeah.
I think we live in a world that's got deep problems. Yeah, it's not a period to be proud of for mankind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I try to mind my own business. I live in a place in the world. I don't, everybody knows that in my pictures or whatever else, I don't engage in any kind of ideological propaganda. I'm not interested in ideological propaganda. I'm not interested in evangelizing, the American way to the rest of the world. I think the rest of the world just wants to be left alone. That's my message.
Yeah.
The rest of the world, if there's something that, about you that interests us that we'd like to, interact with you for that purpose, great, but otherwise, please don't come and tell us how to run our own business.
Right.
I think that's the way the rest of the world, and no one should be surprised with that because no one likes anybody to come into their house and tell them how to run their own life, their own business.
Yeah.
So whatever I'm saying is coming from that direction. I just basically, I don't want to hear about that. It's sort of like that. My big problem, one of my many problems with the whole, what we call the uniparty. We can talk about that. It's, it's sort of these people out there who just don't want to let it go. These neocons and what have you. They don't want to let it go. It's their livelihood. That's their, that's how they make their money. That's their piece of the action. It's not right. It's not right.
Yeah.
So, whatever I can do, to try to deliver the other perspective, great, yeah, because I'm not going to fall for, I'm not necessarily, it's easier for me out here because I don't watch TV. I gave up TV a long time ago. But if I wanted to watch TV, it'd be a pain in the neck for me to do it. So, I'm not exposed to that constant. There are a lot of people who just get up in the morning and they turn the TV on while they're having their coffee.
Right.
And it's noise,
Yeah.
in the background. There's a lot of people, that's their American noise. They listen to those morning shows. It's like the only, you know what the American noise is that I like to listen to? It's, and then the crowd yelling because it's a home run. That's the noise, I like, when I'm visiting home, and it's summer, or early fall, I like listening to the ball game in the background.
Well,
it's not that I'm really
there's
paying
the
attention.
American boy
I
in
like
you.
I like the ball game noise. Yeah, I like that noise. It's sort of like
Yeah. So just kind of a little follow-up to that previous question. As an American who now lives outside of the country, who has been outside of the country for a long time, what do you think that we Americans who are in the country need to know about ourselves? What are we missing? What is the outside-in piece that you wish that people would kind of wake up to? Does that question make sense?
Yeah. It's not an easy question to answer simply, but I don't really know. It becomes here, let me explain. It's a much more elaborate question that you pose. I could say, oh well, the Americans don't have passports. They have no idea what's going on in the rest of the world. They don't care. Jay Leno used to take a map out in the street and say, do you know where the capital of France is?
And that's not what I mean. It's not
not
to say that we're myopic or anything, but that sometimes it's hard when you're in the midst of something to be able to look at yourself from the outside in and see things objectively. So that's all I meant. Not to disparage Americans or talk down to them at all. That's not what I meant.
We've discussed this before. It's sort of like the general public doesn't have the time or the inclination because they're too busy trying to put, bread on the table.
Right.
To completely understand what's going on. And some of the things, yes, there are technically complicated and you can't expect them to know because they didn't study it, But what's happened, and here's where I think that it becomes a more complicated issue, is we have this exuberance now and fervor that, everybody's excited about what's happening. Most of them don't really know what's happening. They just see, oh, they shut down USAID this weekend. Oh, hoo-hoo-ha, it's like they don't really know what, and when we talk about the uniparty, it's sort of like, there are people who you think are aligned with you, but they aren't. These rhinos, for example,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe there are people who listen to them still, but what I'm worried about, because I don't sit around watching podcasts all day, but I look at I look at Joe Rogan Experience, I look at Tucker Carlson, I look at these different people. And it's not like I'm Mr. Know-It-All and I know everything, but it's sort of like, I watch some of these things and I say, it's good that they are where they are, but they're here now, and they really aren't. They got to get up here to really, And what makes me feel better, because I had this issue with Donald Trump, with President Trump. First time around, and as I was watching him, I just thought to myself, well, he's running in the right direction, but I don't think this guy gets really what maybe he has a feeling for it because he's found the people who feel that way, but I'm not sure that he really, comprehends it completely. He's certainly not expressing it in, how I would express it if I wanted to demonstrate that I understood it. But he's surrounded himself now with people who definitely are very eloquent and very smart and understand the whole thing. That's what I think is a big difference from the first time around. Yeah? I don't call them geniuses, but these are very, very competent and capable people who understand the essence, okay, of what it means to be an American. Or, what is the special sauce that makes the United States what it is? They understand this. And they understand how we've lost our way, in geopolitics and in health, in a whole raft of other areas that, they know what needs to be done. They know how to roll their sleeves up. They know what needs to be done, but most importantly, they know why it needs to be done. But this gets back to my whole point about educating the younger generations that are so important. It's all about the younger generations, isn't it? It's not about old people. It's about young people. It's like the obligation to pass on to the people, hopefully they want it, whatever wisdom can be passed on, and so it's not like the wisdom of the founding fathers is the only wisdom in the world. It's just that the whole thing has been blanked out now for 8 years or whatever. It's been, even when Trump was in there by the MSM that we now know is on the payroll of these other people who have no one's interest but themselves in mind. Yeah? Mm-hmm. I'm starting to think it's not even, it's partially ideological or ideological. I just think it's corruption. I really do. I just think these people feel they need an ideological platform so that they can get rich. That's what they're doing. That's really, and people die for that. People are asked to give their lives for that. That's disgusting. That is disgusting. Yeah? And these people are cowards, a lot of them, not all, and some of them actually served. Look, I never served myself. I never had to, but, for people to cavalierly say we're going to send these people off to, put themselves in danger, and they've never, ever experienced that themselves, and they think they have the right to, basically ride on a high horse and tell everybody else what to do, and meanwhile they're making money on it, that's disgusting. That is disgusting, and needs to be fixed. Yeah.
Another question from our friend Erica. She wanted to know if you do any other types of art or creative pursuits, like music. She says you're totally rock and roll, so she kind of had a feeling that you're probably a musician.
Well, I think I've said in our previous interviews that one of the ways that I think is musically. So any kind of a project that involves, like when I did the pictures for the Refusers, I was able to just watch the song and automatically said, yep, I know what pictures go with that song. Yeah, so it's like an unexpected way of writing satirical lyrics. But yeah, I play guitar and a little bit of piano. And early in life, I guess this was serendipity, it was sort of like somehow I figured out early on that trying to be a musician wasn't going to lead. It was going to be a very difficult road path. And so I didn't throw myself into that effort full time, There was a time when I was young where my parents, my mom, they just could not get the guitar out of my hands. It was like constantly. And then, when I should be doing my homework up at 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to figure out songs, because we would figure out songs using LPs. So we would keep playing the LP, and then trying to learn the songs. And there were certain songs that you had to know if you're going to be a guitarist. Then I was in Japan. I had this guitar that I very nice guitar, an SG, a 1969 Edge SG. It's the first instrument I bought with the money that I made during my first summer job. Paid $200 for that guitar. When I came back to go to university from Japan, I went to an international school in Japan. Somebody begged me for that, to buy that guitar. And I thought, because this was back in the 70s, it wasn't easy to get a Gibson guitar in Japan. I said, okay, yeah, you can't get one of these here. I know, it's very expensive. It's all right. And I sold it to him. And now I look back and I think to myself, why did I sell that guitar? I wish I had that guitar now. Wow. But anyway, what happened was I didn't have that guitar when I was in university. I bought an acoustic guitar, this, that. So it basically, it got me involved in other things when I was studying, instead of sitting around playing guitar all the time. And that led down to a whole other different, path,
Sure.
which wound up being a lawyer, And so, yeah, when I first wanted to be a lawyer, I was thinking, yeah, the reason I want to be a lawyer is because I like activism, and this was back then when everybody was suing Ford and Chevrolet because they were basically exploiting consumers, and I was very interested in that. But then I got interested in something else where somebody said, oh, Bill, you're artistic, you should become a lawyer who specializes in art law and blah, blah, blah. I wound up being a securities lawyer. I wound up being a finance lawyer, a deal lawyer, M&A, securities. That's what. Then I wound up doing it internationally.
Glenn
so
says, sorry to interrupt you. Glenn says, we really like your Flickr photo album of daily scenes around Hong Kong.
Yep. Well, it's not just Hong Kong. Well, yeah, on my Flickr, I got mostly Hong Kong. My Instagram, I have pictures of everywhere I'm going. I have pictures of Thailand, I have pictures of Japan.
That leads to another question, actually, from Erica. Erica wanted to know whether you and your family have ever considered coming back to the United States, and if so, where in the United States you might go.
Well, let's say this. I don't want to talk too much about my family, but a significant portion of my family is in the U.S. That's one of the reasons why I worry about my, a lot of things that I worry about.
Yeah.
I have, at this point, if someone said to me, Bill, when you move back, where are you going to live? I say, well, that is really a scenario that I don't think is going to happen, but probably right now, where would I wind up? It would be Texas.
Wow.
If I had to go somewhere, I would be in Texas.
Well, we'll meet you there.
Yeah. That's where I would be. I'm probably already there inside.
That's cool.
But
we have.
Let me just finish.
Go ahead. Yeah.
First of all, I've been living out of the country since '91, and one of the problems for people who live outside of the country when they return, people who are expats who go on a posting for 5 years, 6 years, they go back. It's very difficult to adjust because people don't understand you anymore.
Yeah.
If you ask anybody who's been an expat, and you say that to them, they'll know exactly what you're talking about. Some of it is convenience that people who are on expat packages have, like they have a maid, or if suddenly they can travel and this and that. But even at a more basic level, it's like the Japanese. The Japanese have the same thing. They used to, especially during the Japan economic miracle, they sent all their business people all over the world to be expats for, Toyota and this and that, and then they go back to the home country and they're ostracized, or they're treated as differently because they didn't follow the same path, and they just think differently. This is something that that I experience it. I know. You get back home, you talk about certain things, people can't relate to it. They can't. They don't understand it. And everybody wants to be around people who can, have a commonality and can relate to. They certainly don't want to be around people who think you're nuts because of what you're talking about. So that affects how people like me think.
Yeah.
But for me, it's sort of like I like the freedom. I like being able to go to different places. I'm getting older, and they say one of the best things for people who, as they age, is to be constantly challenging themselves mentally. And I got to tell you that, I can't think of a better way to challenge yourself mentally than to be living in a place where everybody speaks a different language and has a different culture.
Yeah. It's a good way to keep your mind sharp.
Depends
for sure.
on how deep you want to get into something. It's an adventure. You learn, but you're challenged, and that's always a challenge that I've been able to meet. I enjoy.
Do you speak Cantonese?
I speak a little bit. My problem is I lived in so many different places. If I wanted to say that I speak all those different languages, it would be ridiculous. People don't understand. They all think, oh, China. Well, do you speak Mandarin? Do you speak the Shanghai dialect of Mandarin? Do you speak Cantonese? Cantonese is almost like a completely different language from Mandarin. Yeah. Oh, you were raised by your mom was Japanese. How much Japanese do you speak? The only language that I really had to try to make an effort to speak ever was Polish, because in Central Europe and in Poland, when you went there after the wall came down, they only speak Polish and Russian, no English.
Wow.
That's what they were taught in school. There were some people who did study and spoke English, lawyers or what have you, and people who were involved in international business. But if you were out on the street and you needed to go into a shop and you started speaking English, it was like a complete blank. You'd have to use sign language. And there are a lot of places in the world that are still kind of like that. Of course, they all have the internet now. So it's even easier now for someone to go into parts unknown with their phone, because they've got Google Maps and they've got Google Translate, and it's so easy. And people say, oh, I'm having a difficult time. And I say, you have no idea what a difficult time is. You've got your phone. Yeah. That changed everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just getting back to your art for a second, do you think there'll ever be a time when you change the medium, so you don't actually do that sort of Photoshop digital style art, but maybe you might go into a more traditional, more mixed media?
I can paint.
I bet you can.
In fact, I mean, when people look at some of the pictures that I do, you can see watercolor aesthetics in the way I try to do things. Because I was a watercolor painter. And, if I had time, I'd love to, start doing watercolor again. If I was going to go into satire, then I'd have to expand it into another space, which is caricatures, hand caricatures. And of course, that's just another thing that takes time, And of course, some people know that I was very heavily influenced by George Grosz, who was a watercolor artist who did terrific caricatures that were lampooning the Nazis. And then the Weimar period and all the other corruption that went back then. And I tell people, go back and look at his pictures, because that's exactly what's happening, in a lot of respects. The whole idea of fascism, which people don't seem to understand what it means. They all think it's about a guy with a little mustache, but they don't really understand what it means, to have the business industrial complex aligned with the government, functioning, in unison. They don't know anything about that. It's another thing that people need to be taught. It's how it affects government. But I have thought to myself, wouldn't it be nice to sit down and do current pictures in that style? Maybe I would do that. But I am a photographer. And I like to call what I do street photography, because that's a whole different discussion. But for me, that's basically just taking a camera and taking pictures of moments and things that I think are beautiful or interesting. Yeah, and I do that, and people like my photography. So this gets back to the earlier question about my Hong Kong pictures. That's not just me saying, all right, honey, I'm going out this afternoon, I'm doing street photography. That's just me because I carry a camera around wherever I go.
Right.
I do photo workshops where I take people out and we do street photography. I love doing that. If I could only do that in my life, I would do only that.
That's
for
awesome.
fun. Yeah. But when I'm walking around in Bangkok or I'm walking around in Osaka or Tokyo, I'm always thinking, I know, there's certain street photographers who influence the way I take my pictures, and people like that. Yeah, some people have bought, photographs that I've taken, and my friend Danny, who is the fellow who's doing these.
Prince.
Oh, I can't see it.
No, not with your background, but yeah, the
No,
prints that you're doing.
My great Trump wave, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
which he wants to set it up so that there's one place where you can go, and if you want to have a picture of any of my political pictures, and another place where you can just go and look at my photography and buy my photography. And I'm very flattered by that, because this is a person who's the best printer in Hong Kong, and there are a lot of good artists and very good photographers in Hong Kong, and he really likes my work, so I think that's a great compliment to have, because he himself is a great photographer. And he says we should do this, and I've been thinking about, because now I have, later in life you become entitled to start drawing on Social Security and other sources of income, and I'll always be somebody who works. As long as I can work, I will always be somebody who gets up in the morning and does something.
Mm-hmm.
But you begin to get more flexibility in what you need to do and what you want to do, and so I'm looking at things that way now. What do I want to do? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Do you
so,
ever
yeah.
worry about the impermanence of digital art, and how, this huge body of work that you've been doing for 15 years could just disappear if a server went down, or if your hard drive that you have it all on at home gets corrupted?
Well, I have redundancy built into the way I store my images, but you know what? I couldn't care less. If all of a sudden everything, if we all of a sudden got struck by an electromagnetic event and we all had to start from scratch again, I would say, all right, let's start from scratch again. I don't sit around every night looking at my pictures and marveling at what I did before. It's like, all right, I'll get up tomorrow morning and I'll do something else. So I don't worry about that. And the other thing is, look, there are, I don't know if I could say thousands and thousands, but there are a lot of physical versions of my pictures floating around.
Yeah.
Either that I printed and gave people, or that other people have printed up themselves. I know this for a fact. I've walked into places and looked at a picture hanging on the wall. I said, I wonder who did that. Yeah, one time in a men's room in Bangkok, I get it, and then I look there and there's a picture hanging on the wall. I'm thinking, yeah, that's
Wow.
my picture. I did that picture. I get a lot of that funny. That's one of the, talk about serendipity. This is one of the things I really enjoy, because, and it's not like I'm in this for any fame. I'm not interested in fame. But I do enjoy it when all of a sudden I'll be having a conversation with somebody, and they'll say, wait a minute, you're that guy, you're William Banzai7. It's, yeah.
That's cool.
That's a fun, yeah, that's pretty cool. I know that I have people from interactions that I've had over the years, all over the world. So it's a nice thing.
Yeah.
I've actually had people come, I've had some people who are my friends now, who have come to Hong Kong simply because they wanted to visit me.
To seek you out. That's cool.
I don't know. Well, yeah. There have been some other people that I have sought out because I just happened to be in a city that they were in. And yeah, but there's, and they come and visit me, I visit them. But there are a few people who were out here, and maybe they were out here in Asia, and they went out of their way to come through Hong Kong because they wanted to see me. I enjoy that, of course. I like meeting with people who think the same way like we all do, but it's entertaining to be with people who, especially during this past period that we just went through, where everybody had to check out who it was they were talking to and what they could say and what they couldn't. It was like it's like East Germany. It's like the Stasi, right? It's like everybody had to worry about being watched.
Who's saying what? Yeah.
What can they do? And so I had one of my friends, would constantly say to me, Bill, he helped me too. He said, Bill, you need to syndicate your work. You need to get it out to, and then I look at what happened in Dilbert, and there are many other examples where people engaged in whatever sort of artistic got deplatformed.
Yeah.
And they're talking about their you're talking about their livelihoods, debanked, kicked off of whatever payment service this is like,
it's nuts.
Having people watch who is saying what and then reporting them. This is Stasi. It's like, it's one of the reasons why it's very disappointing what's happening. I don't spend a lot of time obsessing over this, but Germany is a very big disappointment to me. You would think, I think there are a lot of people in Germany who do understand it, by the way. So, first, somebody just in the last 12 hours said something in one of the comments or something about the East Germans. Of course, Merkel came from East Germany, but, the East Germans, that was the communist part of the country. They weren't a bunch of Marxists, okay? They know what they escaped, okay? So there are those people who understand quite well, and they're probably all being called right-wing extremists now. But these countries that we supported in Europe with the Marshall Plan and everything else, the whole notion, this was early example of what we're talking about now, 4 and 8. The whole notion was that they were going to emulate our good example. And look at what they chose as an example. Why did that happen? How, they still haven't given up, They're still bent on censorship. It's kind of annoying, because I've mentioned this to several people now, that Axel Springer, which is the parent of Politico and Business Insider, it's a German company, it's a big German company. So Politico, which we now see as a government-financed propaganda and fake news operation, is being financed by a German company, a big German company, and that country is accusing us of interfering in their political affairs? Please,
Clown world.
don't piss on my back and tell me it's raining outside.
Oh, Bill. A couple of last questions, and then I think we can start to wrap up. But a couple of thoughts. One, for one thing, so you have drawn on a lot of historical art in your work. So Norman Rockwell or Puck Magazine or record labels, things like that. Do you think there'll ever be a time in future where artists are drawing on your work and creating derivatives?
There are. I think there already are people who are doing that. Well, you mean creating derivatives? Derivatives of derivatives.
Yeah.
I know that there's some young artists out there who were inspired by what I was doing 10 years ago. And some of them I tried to take under my wing, and I tried to help them. I would post their pictures on Zero Hedge to give them some exposure. It's like, I don't want to be Al Gore saying I invented the internet, but it's true that I really was the one who got the whole idea of using memes, which were basically just nonsense. The whole idea of memes was nonsense, making people laugh. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's slapstick.
Yeah.
But using it as a tool of satire. And now you see there's a lot of that. there isn't enough of it for me to say, oh, that's somebody that I personally now I'm watching because this is inspiring me.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't anything like, if someone has anything like, that someone like that they think they want to call to my attention, please send it to me one way or another in the comments or whatever, or let me know, because I'm always interested in seeing
Yeah.
what other people are doing. So it's embryonic now, and of course, what AI has done is it's flattened the landscape. Anybody can generate something now. Of course, I think that the pictures that AI generates are not at a level that I would be satisfied with. But the incredible thing, there are certain things about AI that I find incredible. It's just incredible that they have now something called prompt engineering, where it's basically these pictures are being generated by giving commands in English, textual commands to the program, generate a picture of XYZ, and you got to become, you have to be very, very explicit in what you're asking for the algorithm to do. People can generate pretty elaborate pictures doing that. So if someone has the mental agility and understanding that they can create good satire, but they don't feel they have the artistic skill, well, this can be a tool that can help them to do that.
Yeah.
But
not quite the same soul as your work.
There is that potential that people, but when I look at these pictures that are generated by AI now, I think everybody else knows too, you can tell right away that a computer did it, because everything's fuzzy. That's how, and there are always little artifacts that you can find in there. It's, that someone like me would never stand for, because like whenever I do a picture, I always go back later and look at it again with my glasses on to see and sometimes I see mistakes and I just have to clean them up, and then I just replace them on the post. People may not notice, but I just say, I can't have that there. I missed that, it's like a little glitch there I got to clean up.
That's cool. Glenn wants to know, how do you find the old magazine templates for your works?
It's all online. It's all on. I wish I had the paper, because I have a very elaborate X-Acto knife collection, because I started doing that with an X-Acto knife to see what I could do. I was buying posters and this and that, and I just realized that not only does it take up a lot of space, but it's I don't know what's happened. You have to go to, what do they call it? There's a word for bric-a-brac, and it's escaping me now. I'm having a senior moment. When you go to flea markets and you see piles of magazines and books, that's what you have to, that is what you would have to do, and it's not easy to go. So it's easier now that people have uploading all kinds of material to do searches on the internet and find different websites that basically just catalog, the Library of Congress is one of them, but there are others, and catalog it in a way that you can figure out what is not affected by copyright.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had, in the very beginning when I started doing this, I spent a lot of time looking all over the place, doing image searches to see what's there. And now, I don't know where everything is, but if someone wants to know where something is, I can find it.
You probably know.
Yeah, I can find it for a lot of different purposes, which is, not just doing satire, for other, websites and whatever. If someone needs a certain kind of picture, I always enjoy that challenge of finding something. We
talked about earlier how you have done series where, like for example, the zombie series or the Puck series. Would you ever go back to those, or once you've kind of closed out a thought or an idea, that's it?
No, I'll go back. I get it, I got the zombies out of my system because there's so many zombie pictures on the internet. It's all right, now I'm going to do zombies. And the zombie pictures are pretty funny,
Yeah.
Like the one with Greta where she's got a windmill stuck in her head, I mean, there are a couple there that are pretty funny. But if I think there's somebody who deserves to be zombified, he will be zombified. He or she will be zombified. The Pucks, I have to say the Puck satires that I did are beautiful.
Yeah.
Because the color of those old Puck images, that not only is aligned with the way I think of color and the way things should look, but it's the artists that were doing those pictures back then there's nothing like that now. Those are not cartoons, those are illustrations. And so that's like hallowed ground for me. I know what's there, and I will go there and recover a picture if I think it'll be helpful now. Like the other day, I did one. I just did a picture of. I don't even remember. Somebody deserved to be depicted as a robber baron, and he got it last week. I'm losing my mind. So, I will just do a series like that. Sort of accidentally, I'll say, oh no, like when I did the fashion series where I dressed everybody up in all the funny
Those
fashion.
were great.
Remember that? Yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll do that again because there are a lot of new faces that deserve it. But one of the problems that I face now, that we face in the satire world, is when all of a sudden, I'm not going to use the word regime because regime has a negative connotation. Whenever there is a regime change, and all of a sudden the people who are in are people you are more satisfied with than the people who just got kicked out. You start to lose your momentum on people who deserves to get it. I happen to think Biden still and Obama, and a few of these other characters, Fauci, they still deserve to get it, and they're going to get it, yeah, because of the damage they did. And then, of course, they're circling back and trying to justify things that they said, or they're trying to repaint reality and tell us that, how successful and great they were. Yeah, well, I'm not going to stand by and let that happen. If I think deserves it, then,
Wow.
then they're fair game again, and then I may have to go back and get one of those Puck pictures and use that because that's the best way to depict it. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like at this point you have no lack of topics to cover. I mean, as I was saying earlier, when we first started talking about doing this live, we thought we'd be talking about things like, preemptive pardon of Fauci. And since then, that seems like old news, even though it only happened a little while ago, because so much more has been happening almost on a daily, almost hourly basis. So there's lots of things for you to sink your teeth into.
We are in a universe, right? There's two things. Like what you just mentioned is accountability. Accountability is very important. I think there are a lot of people who need to be held to account. Okay? Some of them, I'm not a constitutional law expert. I don't know whether or not this whole notion of pardoning people for crimes that they haven't been prosecuted for yet. I don't know. I don't believe. To me, it's not even a question of whether that would hold up in court. It's just like, what does that mean? What does that mean in terms of how we govern ourselves? That whoever is in there, this is banana republicanism. That's what it is. Oh, I'm the big boss now and I'm going to pardon everybody. Yeah? We're going to get away with it. Wouldn't that be great if Idi Amin could say that? Yeah? Or some of these other characters that we've watched over the years, if all of a sudden they could pardon themselves, it's not an exaggeration. Corruption. If you're gonna have laws that are designed that are aimed at controlling corruption. You can't have people who are going to be committing the corruption just pardoning themselves so they get away with corruption, because then you basically are operating with two sets of laws.
Zero
The people who
consequences.
get the people who get to pardon themselves and their friends, and the people who don't. It's obvious.
Right. Yeah.
I think a lot of people understand this. I think they understand it, and I think they're worried about it the way it looks. Yeah? Because that's how it looks. People aren't stupid. They were affected by all this stuff. COVID is the biggest one. Yeah? People were really, really affected by this. They're still suffering the consequences in such a myriad of ways. Yeah? And basically, he basically washed the slate clean for these people and said, oh, they can't be held because this is going to be some kind of, revenge situation. All of a sudden, accountability is revenge.
Right.
Never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
We have that, but more importantly, we have the people who are just charging ahead, saying, let's go. And, that's what we're watching these last 2 weeks. Let's go. And I'm saying, yeah, let's go. Let's worry about that. Let's let someone else worry about that. And by the way, this guy, Kash Patel, I started reading, I looked at the first 10 pages of his book, which I'm going to finish reading. And I said to myself, man, this guy, he is a case of dynamite. Mm-hmm. He is not good news for them. Okay, you look at his legal background. He was a public defender, then he wound up being a prosecutor, and then he had this role that fighting terrorism and this. I mean, this guy's he's the real deal, and he's talking about. I mean, his thing is all the shenanigans that have gone on, with the quote-unquote swamp and deep state, and how they basically got involved in things they had no business being involved in. This is his thing. This is his, obviously he knows how to run, the FBI, I think, but his crusade is going to be basically exercising all the people who decided that was okay to do that. And when you start reading his book, you say, well, he's not just talking about this. This is a guy who really understands his stuff. He's written, the book that he wrote is a book about how to dismantle the swamp.
Yeah.
That's what really interests me. If anybody wants to know what's in store, I mean, he's written a book about it. He's written a book where he's talking about what he saw and what he discovered and how to dismantle it. That's why I want to read this book. I said, okay, because things are happening this last 2 weeks.
Right.
That to me are just like, you talk about chess. I mean, these guys are really grandmasters in what they're doing. I mean, they're doing things that I just said, first of all, that's clever, and second of all, I never thought that could be even possible, that they could do such a thing.
What's his book called?
Here. Just bear with me.
All right, we can look it up too.
Yeah, look it up. It's easy to find.
We had another question about your process, your
Yep.
creative process. Do you listen to music while you're working? And if so, what kind of music?
I don't listen to music as much as I should anymore.
I feel the same way.
When I used to have the turntable and stereo system, music was on all the time.
And what kind? What are your top favorite music types?
And, it all depends on the time of day and the mood. Of course, it's easy for me to say that, but when I'm in the gym, I want to listen to music that's active music, and so I'll listen. I don't particularly like the music that they're playing on the PA system, but yeah, I'll listen to upbeat music. And if it's late at night, I'm going to be listening to, bebop era jazz or something like that, or somebody who's playing more fusion-oriented music. If it's during the day, I can be listening to other things. I still listen to Creedence Clearwater. I listen to everything from, or just one of the funny things about Instagram. I was one of the very early Instagrammers before Facebook. acquired it, which annoyed me to know him, but I never dropped off of Instagram. A lot of artists and a lot of musicians who are not mainstream, famous musicians, but who are very good musicians, post song clips on Instagram, and once you follow them, you get the feed and you hear the music and you say, well, that's pretty good, and then you can whatever streaming service you use, you can find them and listen to new music. I like doing that, so I do listen to a lot of new music that I enjoy listening to.
So if you come live in Texas, are you going to listen to country?
When I was in Austin 2 years ago, what was it? There's this place on the strip there, that main road in Austin, on the left side of the street. Oh, I can't remember the name of that bar. That is a real country western bar. I love that bar because country music is not only just country music. It's fun. It's entertaining. It's very entertaining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
So I do listen to country western music. I was listening to Johnny Cash last night.
Cool.
I listen to all kinds of music. Yeah. By the way, if anybody wants to know my opinion on who's the best guitarist right now on his feet, it's Tommy Emmanuel. Go look him up. He's a guy who can play finger-style guitar, who really does beautiful music, and first of all, he doesn't politicize himself, and second of all, he's just a beautiful person.
Nice.
He performs a lot. That's my pitch for Tommy Emmanuel.
Sounds good. Listen, let's start to close it up. We have a longtime fan of yours, Dwayne, suggested that we do a little word association. So why don't we end with that? So he said, ask him to give his first thought or one word on the following. So these are Dwayne's suggestions. Deep seek.
I hope I pass. Deep seek. Comeuppance.
Nice. That's a good take on it. Linda Blair.
Linda Blair. Is that Star Wars?
No, Linda Blair is The Exorcist.
Oh, Linda Blair. Hottie.
Ivermectin.
Where can I get it?
Warhol.
Genius.
Nice. And then this one's just a bit of fun.
Maybe not for, well, yeah, I think he's a genius. I think he was a genius.
Bread
People
pudding.
might be surprised by that. Huh?
Bread pudding.
Delicious.
This is fun. I told Dwayne, I don't know if Banzai's going to be able to give it a one-word answer, but you did great. You did great.
Are those the only ones? That was easy.
Those are the ones, but maybe people who are still watching have
I
more.
hope we passed the audition.
Anyone have any other words you want to throw out for Banzai to react to? Steve, any thoughts? Well, I think that this has been great. I know that we've had quite a few viewers who have stayed with us for 2 hours. Oh, here we go. This is a good way to end.
just me fooling around.
Well,
You know-
that was great.
When you wind up being an underwear guitarist in your bedroom, you wind up just noodling all the time. Unless someone says, you need to show up at 7 o'clock on such and such a night because we're going to play the following songs. Then all of a sudden you're serious and you better focus on what you're going to play. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
I enjoyed this.
Us
I
too.
enjoy interacting with, it's too bad we can't do this with everybody doing like a big Zoom where we're all talking, but that could get out of control. But I very much enjoy interacting with people who I've known over the years. I'm not disappearing, and it's an adventure. We're really at the beginning of an adventure now. I don't know where this is going to lead. It looks like we have the upper hand for the moment, but don't believe for a minute that these people are sitting around doing nothing. Okay? They're trying to regroup and figure out, what their next move is going to be. They're in chaos, and hopefully we'll be able to augment the rest of the country, and we'll set ourselves on the right course again, which is a course that allows, basically follows the premise of what that monk that I pay attention to said.
Yeah.
And allows everyone to live their own life the way they want to without interfering with anyone else.
Yeah, amen to that.
And thank you very much, you and Stephen, for arranging this, because I would never be able to do this on my own. It would be too much for an old guy like me to lose
Not at
patience
all.
with. I'm amazed that we can do it this way. And see you on the internets. What's the, yes, squirrel, yeah.
We love you. We love you, Bill.
We got to salute
love
the
you, Bill.
squirrel.
We'll do this again. Yeah. Yeah. We love you, Bill. We'll do this again.
We love you very much. We thank you for doing this, and we are
By the
just
way-
very happy to have you as our tour guide on this crazy adventure.
By the way, that's one of my pictures back there. That's a Bangkok
wow.
sunset.
Oh wow!
Kind of reminds me of there's a sunset image on Apocalypse Now.
That's
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I thought it was.
It looks like that. It's like the sun setting behind, see all the wires in
Yeah.
Bangkok? They're like these spaghetti threads of wires over all the streets. And everybody thinks, oh, this is third world. Why do they do it? You know why they do that? Because in Bangkok, you have certain seasons where it rains a lot, and you can wind up having the canals go up, and then the ground is flooded. So all the wires cannot be underground. They have to be up in the air.
Amazing.
So that's what the streets look like, a lot of the streets like that. Anyway, that's what's
Amazing.
sunset.
Great
Well,
picture.
Thank you again,
We'll do
Bill.
this again,
Thank you.
Bill.
Be
Okay.
safe and be well, and we'll be in touch soon.
Take care. Thanks very much. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.